Snake is dead.
Snake! What happened? Snake! Snake!
Kept you waiting, huh? Hello all and welcome back to the corner. Well, it's about time I put a piece of arcade equipment on my work table again, this time taking the form of the Konami GM941, otherwise known as the Konami VIPER. From what I can tell, the VIPER was first used in the Code 1 Dispatch arcade game. And judging from the label on the unit, is also the game that is installed on this unit too. Games for the most part were stored on a PCM-CIA-like card, which is actually just a compact flash to PCM-CIA converter. The card itself contains the entire game as one binary file that is executed by the VIPER's BIOS. Other games such as ParaParaParadise use an IDE hard drive which would attach here, if it were populated on this model, of course. This board comes from the time where Konami was also installing these Dallas Timekeeper RTC chips, in which some but not all games would break when the battery died. Of course, if this board is on the table, then it either means that there is something wrong with it or has an interesting story to tell. And given the intro, at least the first half of that must be true. I guess then, I need to speak to my CO. This is Naoki. Colonel, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. What's the situation, Naoki?
Well, it looks like the VIPER's DOA. There's no video output, and the system hangs on power-up.
Just as I expected.
Judging by what I've heard, it's not going to be an easy repair either. I can take a look at it, Colonel. There's a lot of work, and there's no guarantees. You still want to try?
I'm afraid so. Sorry to have to lay it all in your lap, but you're all I've got. I wish I could do something to help.
Understood. Just one question, though. Why this game? I'm all for silly games, but flying a helicopter for a tunnel and smashing cars out of the way ranks pretty high on the absurdity list.
You see...
It wasn't just to play ParaParaParadise, was it?
I'll let you decide the best COA.
Got it. Commencing Operation VIPER now. We're in, and already it's looking bad. But before I say why, let's take a moment to look around the board. Perhaps the most obvious chip that you can see is the main CPU, right in the centre of the board. This is a Motorola MPC8240 package which combines both a PowerPC 603E core with a PCI bus and DRAM memory controller. The PowerPC 603 core is one that has been used in various platforms over the years, including the older beige PowerPC based Macintoshes, some Amiga accelerators, and was also used in an unusual dual CPU configuration in the B-Box computer. Looking around, we can also see a Konami 056879 custom ASIC, which is effectively a large I/O latch port used here for the jammer port. Below it is a PC16552D dual UART controller with FIFO buffers, and to the side of that are dual CPLDs which are likely acting as address bus decoders. And then we come to one worrying sight, the Timekeeper, which is in a socket, and Konami did not socket these. Someone else must have been here before. I also found the cause of the missing video. There should be a GPU here, but there might still be some hope yet. Colonel, I'm inside the VIPER, and I might just have a plan to fix it.
Excellent. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
Age? I'm not even 30, Colonel. Anyway, the VIPER GPU is as bad as we thought. It's a Voodoo free chip, apparently the 3500 model in a BGA package. Seems like the stress of operating in an arcade environment caused excessive stress to the solder. Typically the solder balls will expand and contract depending on temperature, but then that can cause thermal stress, and this GPU had a heatsink glued to it, adding to that stress. As a result, they likely cracked, just like how those Xbox 360 GPUs did. Colonel, I also have some bad news.
What is it?
I already tried to reflow it before calling you. It didn't work, and even worse, it pulled some pads with it.
Damn!
Seems like this board just wasn't strong enough to handle the stress. But I have a plan. See this footprint? It looks exactly like a PCI slot, and since these traces go straight to the BGA pads, there's a chance that we can solder in a PCI socket and just use a regular PC card instead. I've already removed the GPU and VRAM chips after the reflow failure, so I should just need the PCI slot soldering in. Only problem is the BGA pads are shorting in places, so ideally they need removing or the traces to them cut to prevent them from causing an issue. Either way, it's not going to look as pretty. I have a PCI socket I've got to solder into the unit. Once it's soldered in, I'm hoping that a standard PC card will work. If it does, then I have this right angle adapter that I hope I can use to keep the card inside of the VIPER's cage, and then use a small flat ribbon cable to connect the video output to the main board. And potentially I'd be able to upgrade the unit with a fan to help cooling, although the height restrictions might prevent that anyway. In this case, I'm demonstrating with a Voodoo 2 card which will almost certainly not work, so instead, let's unpack a Voodoo 3 card. This Voodoo 3 was generously loaned to me to test with by Andy. Thank you, Andy. This isn't exactly the card I was looking for, as it's a Voodoo 3 3000 with custom speed holes precisely drilled into the PCI bracket, whereas the original chip was a 3500 series and was soldered onto the motherboard instead. I'm hoping at worst that this will just mean worse graphics performance, but if the games or drivers embedded within the games require that specific chip, then this idea just won't work. Now, I know that this card does work in my Compact Desk Pro, and despite what others say, the GPU BIOS having firmware for PCs does not matter. The BIOS extension on the card is loaded by the PC's BIOS, so that the PC BIOS can work with different graphics card at boot. But in the VIPER, the BIOS and the games have this driver built in, so this ROM chip would be ignored anyway. This is all assuming the idea works, however. But there's only one way to find out, so let's get it installed and try it out. I tack down the corners to hold the socket in place, as I want to make sure it's flat before soldering all of those pins. And it's looking pretty good, so I'm going to commit to soldering the whole lot in. Right, well, between my soldering skills, my solder and my iron possibly being the wrong temperature, that went a bit better than I was expecting. You can definitely see all the heat scorching from the chip though. Also, just in case you're wondering, you might be able to see I've actually gone around with a blade and cut all these traces away from the pads. So obviously those pads look horrible, and some of them are bridging, some of them are shorted. So I've just cut them all off, so hopefully the PCI slot is entirely isolated from the BGA portion. You can also see though, some corrosion started to form on the RAM, so I'm going to go clean this board off and then hopefully we can test this PCI slot. Of course the idea is to use this port here to feed video back into the board so that it can come out of the jammer connector. Hopefully that idea works. If not, we'll have to see how we can put video back into the board. The thing I've actually noticed with the VIPER case is that you've got these two standoffs here. And if you look at the back of the board, you can clearly see where those two standoffs would touch on the bottom of the PCB. I'm wondering that's to prevent the board from flexing downwards because of heat. Obviously, if that were the case, that would prevent the board from sagging downwards and causing stress to the VGA chip. But I also wonder if, because it prevented it from going down, whether that would also mean that it's going to cause stress to the VGA chip because it can't expand, or rather it can only expand upwards as well. and you'll notice that the inner pads are pretty much all fine, but it's the outer ones that have got a problem. I need to remove the PCI bracket so I can install it straight into the board without the right angle adapter, as I don't want to add that extra variable to this test. I've got a VGA cable running straight from the Voodoo card, so if there is any video output, we'll definitely see it. But before we get too hopeful, let's turn it on. And already it's not looking good. In fact, it's looking like this idea might be a bust. The LEDs are stuck in the same GPU initialization phase as before, so either the VIPER needs a 3500 chip or the PCI slot idea is just at fault here. For the record, I know that this monitor works with both 15 and 24 kHz arcade resolutions, the latter of which is what the VIPER outputs, even though in this example I'm demonstrating with a slightly faulty Tekken board which runs at 15 kHz. I guess then there's nothing else but to contact the kernel.
Colonel. I already know.
It's not quite a dead end. It could just be that we need a Voodoo free card with a 3500 chip. But the only PCI example I can find is a modern version, and it's $350 for one.
Damn.
I don't think the board is worth that. But we might be able to set up an eBay saved search for another card, or...
It's okay. You did what you could. Now, let it rest.
Colonel...